Can you believe that I've done 79 of these Watch It in Action videos? What's going on, everyone, and welcome to episode 79 of Watch It in Action. I'm your host, BouseFeenux, and today I wanted to kick it old school and give you guys a little bit of a history lesson. Today, we're covering a weapon that most of you new players probably haven't heard of, and there's a pretty good reason why. That weapon is the Tiberon, and it's a burst rifle weapon forged by a Master Tenno gunsmith. It features primarily puncture damage, a burst action fire rate, extreme accuracy, and is a super fun weapon to use, but ultimately falls short of the newer weapons that are constantly being released into this game. The big issue with the Tiberon is that it has virtually no critical or status chance, making it difficult to choose this weapon for higher end content. Being what the community calls a pure damage weapon, the Tiberon has almost no scalability into late game. That being said though, it functions well enough with the build that I've put on it to be formidable in any tower or planetary mission as long as you aren't going too far into endless type missions like defense or survival. Now, you may be asking at this point, why are you making a video about a redundant weapon? To answer that question, I'd say that the Tiberon is a fantastic example of one of the many pieces of gear that suffer from something people call power creep. Now, if you're new to Warframe, you may not know that this is an extremely volatile topic in the community, and there are two camps of people. One camp believes that Warframe suffers from power creep, the other adamantly refuses to believe that such a concept exists in Warframe. Now, I'm not really trying to tell you guys one way or another, I just want to present some interesting points and let you guys decide for yourselves if this is a thing. In my personal opinion though, I believe that power creep does exist in Warframe, and massively so. Now, what exactly is power creep? Power creep is defined as the gradual unbalancing of a game due to successive releases of new content. The phenomenon may be caused by a number of different factors and, in extreme cases, can be damaging to the longevity of the game in which it takes place. As new expansions or updates are released, new game mechanics, units, equipment, and/or effects are introduced, usually stronger than the previous existing content. Game developers use this primarily to push the new content, as it gives an incentive to buy it for competitions against other players, or as new challenges for the single-player experience. Okay, so for those of you that watch my videos regularly, you know that I don't normally delve into topics like this, and most of you would argue that this term can't even be applicable to Warframe because of the way Warframe works. I'm not bashing the game here, I just think that it's a pretty interesting topic when we look at the progression of Warframe as a game. Warframe isn't a level-based game like World of Warcraft or any other MMO. Yes, there is a leveling mechanic in Warframe, but it doesn't necessarily add anything to your weapons or gear except capacity points to install mods, which then in turn increase your effectiveness in various ways. But when I read up on this phenomenon and saw this definition, I felt that it perfectly described Warframe in a nutshell. For example, think of the last time you saw a weapon that was released in the past few months that wasn't predisposed towards either a crit or a status build, or didn't have some sort of unique mechanic. There really aren't many. In fact, in the last 4 months, there haven't been any. Here's another example. Notice that older Warframes are being reworked more and more because some of them are no longer viable in various settings. Notice that most all Warframes reworked in the last 5 months have been given some sort of ability to scale in effectiveness to combat Warframe's artificial difficulty method of just raising enemy level and the stats the longer you're in a mission. That's pretty interesting, right? Anyways, you guys can take off your tinfoil hats now as we jump back over to our main topic, the Tiberon. This weapon may not scale very well in the late game, i.e. anything past 35 minutes in T3 or T4, or any other endless mission at that time mark, but it is amazingly fun to use, and if you're a veteran that's gotten most things maxed out, or just a new player with a lot of resources looking for a fun weapon to invest into, you really can't go wrong with this thing. Modding a weapon doesn't get any simpler than the setup for the Tiberon. It's extremely straightforward. The only downside is you'll need about 5 forma for this build to fit. To start off the build, we'll be using heavy caliber. This mod gives us a massive increase to damage across the board at the cost of accuracy. The accuracy loss isn't much of a downside, seeing as the Tiberon is extremely accurate to begin with. Next up, split chamber offers multi-shot at no downside. This is an easy choice and a necessary one. We want to fire as many projectiles as possible. Our third mod, Serration, is basically heavy caliber without the accuracy loss. There isn't a single primary rifle type weapon in the game that we won't use this mod on. The last mod on the top row is a personal choice for me. If you like, you can replace this with just about anything. I usually call a slot like this a utility slot. For this space though, I've chosen to use Shred, as it gives us punch through and a small increase to fire rate. I feel that punch through on a weapon like this is almost invaluable, but that's just me. The entire bottom row is reserved for elemental mods. You want to primarily use the 90% elementals, as this weapon has exceedingly poor status chance. The 60% dual stat mod at the end of the row is there because A, we'd have to form the weapon again to fit another 90% elemental mod, and B, sometimes having one combined elemental and one single element is better than having two combined elementals. And that covers the mod setup, guys. It really doesn't get much simpler than this. Let's head over to the simulacrum and I'll show you how this weapon performs in a high-level scenario. For today's exercise, I'll be using a couple of different targets. For the first test, I'll be using some flesh-based targets that have little armor and no shields, as indicated by the red health bars. Notice we're doing about 1 to 3,000 damage per projectile. Not bad, right? Let's bring in the next set of targets. These are Corrupted Lancers, and they're considered to have medium armor. They have a good balance of damage mitigation and health. In layman's terms, they can be pretty tough. As such, notice how we're doing about 1/10 of the damage we were before. Going a level higher, let's bring in the big guns. This is a Corrupted Heavy Gunner, one of the toughest enemies in the game next to Bombards. They've got a massive amount of armor and health at this level. Just to kill even one of these with the Tiberon, I had to empty several magazines. I think tests like this are pretty interesting and reveal a lot about these types of weapons. I think it's even more interesting that this weapon is 2 years old, and nowadays we have weapons that are able to eliminate these very targets in one shot. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments about this. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Also, if you haven't seen it yet, I've gone through on my word of releasing non-Warframe content and have started a slow play of Dark Souls 3 that I'd love to share with you guys. Lastly, if you enjoyed this video, support it with a like. That helps out tremendously on YouTube, and if you're new here, consider subscribing. I put out new Warframe videos, or otherwise, pretty much daily. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching.